welcome everyone. My name is Melissa and I'm the manager of events and programs here at JMT Consulting. We are an ERP financial solutions firm that specifically works with nonprofits only. We've been in business for 30 years. I need to update that slide. If you go to the next slide for me, Scott, that'd be great. I have a few housekeeping notes that I wanted to share. We are recording this webinar. We will share a copy of the slides and the recording with you following the webinar. If at any time you have a question during the program, please make sure to submit it in your Q&A box and we'll answer those at the end of the webinar. And with that, I'm going to introduce Scott Hollrah from Venn Technologies. He's our wonderful presenter today and we are happy to have him. And with that, take it away, Scott.
All right, good afternoon or good morning for those of you on the West Coast. I am Scott Hollrah. I'm the founder and managing partner at Venn Technology. I'll tell you about us here in just a second. Quick rundown of what we're going to do, tell you a little bit about Venn, tell you a little bit about the work that we do, and then we'll get into some best practices as it relates to building system integrations. And as we go through this presentation, we're going to talk a lot about specific applications, mainly because they're the applications that we work on day in and day out. But really, when it comes to the best practice part, the conversation really applies to whatever systems you might be working with. A little bit about me. For those of you in the SEC, I'm a fighting Texas Aggie. Over the years, I've worked with lots and lots of different technologies with a heavy emphasis on Salesforce.com and Sage Intacct. We've worked across all kinds of industry verticals, including a lot in the nonprofit space. Roughly half of our customers are in nonprofit. And one of the things about our organization is that we really take a big picture approach to our integrations. Often people will come to us and say, hey, can you help us get data from here to here? And we'll talk about this again in a little bit, but it's important that you actually look at what happens before that initial point and what happens after that second point. There's so much more to consider, and that's really how we operate, how we build out our integrations across systems. I am based just outside of Dallas, Texas. We opened an office this year in Washington, D.C., and we are doing work all across the country. At Venn, we have something we call it our brand promise, and that's what you see on the screen. We create systems to free people to focus on what they're best at. And for your entertainment, I won't play this, but if you go out to YouTube, find Venn Technology, we made a fun little music video that kind of tells the story of the burnt out controller, CFO, development officer that's just struggling to get all this data back and forth and how we solve the problem. So it's a good laugh. Go check that out when you get a chance. As I mentioned, there's several applications that we're really focused on. At Venn, we are a Sage Intacct marketplace partner. And what that means is that we come alongside groups like JMT Consulting, and while they are focused on putting together the best possible Intacct implementation for you, we're there to help you take it a little bit further and connect that into other things, taking the value of that core platform and extending it out. We have a couple of listings out on the Intacct marketplace. One is for our Salesforce nonprofit integration for Intacct, and the other is for a Stripe integration. So people that are taking credit card payments that need it to flow directly into the accounting system. We do a lot of that work in kind of a standardized manner. But at the end of the day, you see a whole bunch of icons off to the right there. We help any people integrate anything with an API to Sage Intacct. The other aspect of our business is our Salesforce.com practice. So we are a Salesforce partner, and we do everything from implementing brand new ground up systems. So for those of you on the call who may be on something else and are thinking about Salesforce, we would be able to help you move off of Razor's Edge or whatever system you might be on. For those of you that may already be on Salesforce, my guess is you're probably not getting the full potential out of it. And we will oftentimes come in and help organizations optimize that existing system. And for others, we act as kind of an outsourced administrator. So it may not make sense for you to have a full-time Salesforce admin. Venn Technology can step in and kind of fill that role for you. Everybody on the Venn Technology team has one or more Salesforce certifications. This is just kind of a sampling of kind of the different area of expertise that we have. And you'll notice on the right, I've called one out, and that is the nonprofit cloud consultant. I mentioned earlier that nonprofit is half or more of all that we do. And I'm very proud that one of the members on our team was actually one of the very first people in the world to obtain the nonprofit cloud consultant. So we speak nonprofit, we know nonprofit, and we understand the differences between how you operate and how the for-profit world operates. A little bit about our ethos. I grew up in the Salesforce world where they preached this message of clicks, not code. We want to be able to configure things as opposed to having to write custom code to achieve the things that we want. And so we really look at code as a last resort. We want to be able to configure systems as far as we can without having to write that code. And we'll talk a little bit more about why here in a minute. I already talked about the big picture approach. And when we are in that mode, we've really got to look at all the different parts and pieces that are floating around. And we can't try to fix things in silos or fix things in a vacuum. We've got to look at, from end to end, where do things really begin and where do things really end? And that's where that's how we back into figuring out how to make the in-between work. So before we dive into the meat of this, just kind of laying some groundwork, my hope is that at the end of the session, you will come away with a better understanding of whether or not it makes sense to integrate your systems. Sometimes it doesn't. We're going to talk about several different ways to go about integrating systems. And my hope is that you'll come away with a sense of which might be the best approach for you. And then finally, what are some criteria that you really need to think through before you can take on that integration project? Real quick, I don't know, Melissa, I don't know if we can do like a show of hands, but let me just throw this out there. Is anybody out there already using Salesforce? Is there a way to maybe chat that over?
They can either chat or they can raise their hand.
Looks I got like one, two, 4 of you. Okay, so there's a handful of you that are on Salesforce. So I suspect that the rest of you are probably on Razor's Edge or something something similar. I don't know if we're going to be able to communicate this across very well, but a question that I would often ask in an in-person setting is how well would you say your systems are integrated? Scale of 1 to 10. And most often, people will raise their hand at 5 and 6 and maybe 7. But when we start getting up into the 8s, 9s, 10s, a lot of hands in the room start going down. And my guess is that for those of you that don't have integrated systems, you've got a number of challenges. And so I love this slide here. Today, we use tons and tons of different applications. Many of these names probably ring a bell. Many of you probably are using several of these. And in 2020, these things should work together. We should be able to take that donation in our donor management system or our online giving platform, have that flow into the donor management and onto finance. And then, tie it in with something like a collaboration tool like Slack. Hey, we just achieved this major donation. Let's get the word out to the whole company and get everybody really excited. So there's all kinds of examples. Maybe you put on events and you use something like Cvent or Eventbrite. You should be able to take those registrations, flow them again into that donor management, and for those registration fees, pass them on into accounting without a human having to touch anything. I know this will come as no shock to you, but manual processes are time consuming and they are error prone. How many times have you had a corrupted macro, spoil your Excel file? There's just lots of different problems that come with these manual processes. And not only is it time consuming, not a good use of resources, but it also often handicaps you in terms of not having timely insight into important metrics about the organization. How are we doing on our revenue? How are we doing on our expenses? For those of you that may track a lot of operational metrics, not having that info across systems really leaves you blind and may hinder your decision-making abilities. All right, so let's talk a little bit about different ways to integrate systems. And the first, I even kind of alluded to it on the previous slide, is the classic export import. Again, if we were in the same room, I'd have you all raise your hands, and I'm guessing that most, if not all of you, have probably done an import, probably your payroll data, sometime in the last couple of weeks. And on the upside, hey, it's free, right? And I usually do air quotes around free because obviously it's taking your time. But on the downside, it is time consuming. We deal with formatting issues. We might have data transformations. We export out of this application and it formats the date this way, but the system that's receiving the data, the date formatted in a different way. And so we've got to go through, reformat, run some formulas, do all kinds of different things to get it in. And with that, we can encounter errors. We can have duplication. We've got a client that we worked with several years ago down in Austin, Texas, who wasn't quite ready to go fully automated. And so we built them an export file out of Salesforce that they were then able to just go and import into Sage Intacct. Well, it didn't take but a week when we get a phone call saying, hey, remember we talked about that fully automated integration? I said, yeah. He said, well, maybe it's time for us to revisit that. What had happened was somebody had gone on vacation and not communicated the last date that they exported the data and imported it. And as a result, they ended up duplicating all of the information that had been imported and then a whole lot more. And so the export import, sometimes it's the only option. And if that's the case, you've got to roll with it. But there may be better options as well. So our next option is what I call packaged integrations. Oftentimes, software publishers have pre-built, ready to go, I'm going to say plug and play type integrations with other systems. I'm sure at some point we've all used one. And on the plus side, they can be a lot quicker to implement. And oftentimes you're going to get updates from the software publisher over time. And those updates usually include things, additional features and functionality that add value to that integration. But on the downside, just because there is a packaged integration option available, it doesn't mean it's going to meet your use case. And the other side of it is, and we see this a lot in the Salesforce world, packaged integrations may not play well with the way that you have set your systems up. Even if it meets the use case, you may have customized your source systems in such a way that packaged integration just won't work. So a quick little story, here at Venn Technology, we use MailChimp for our email communications, and we use Salesforce.com as our CRM system. And we wanted to drink our own champagne, so to speak, and have our systems integrated so that we didn't have to do that ongoing export import. And we got really excited when we found this pre-built MailChimp integration. However, our hearts kind of sunk a little bit when we really dug into it and realized we've got some things in our Salesforce environment and the way that we categorize our audiences and group people together that it just wasn't going to play with that packaged integration. And so we had to go through an exercise to build something different that really met our needs. And one of the things that I like to do when we're doing this kind of evaluation is we need to lay out our use case. And in this example, this is a reflection of what a standard integration looks like for Salesforce.com and Sage Intacct. For a lot of nonprofits, this just doesn't meet their needs. We're not dealing with sales orders and invoices. You know, perhaps for those that are grant funded, you may deal with some of that, but for most organizations, this workflow just doesn't make sense. And so it's really important for you to lay out the applications, lay out the data that needs to get exchanged across the different objects in the systems, and determine if that packaged option is actually going to meet your needs. All right, the next option is custom code. And I think that for so many of us, when we think about an integration, this is where our mind goes, right? We think about the developer that's just, you know, coding away at the keyboard. And for a lot of us, myself included, it's just a whole bunch of gobbledygook. I can't make any sense of it, but I'm glad those guys can. On the plus side, with the custom code option, you can get exactly what you want. If the APIs for the different applications support the workflow you're trying to achieve, you can get exactly what you want. But on the downside, custom code is almost always the most expensive and the most time-consuming option. Additionally, with custom code, we don't get a lot of flexibility. And so let's say we go live with our integration and 6 months down the road, we decide we need to change some field mappings. Well, we've got to go spin up the dev team, dig through tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of lines of code, find the couple lines that pertain to that mapping, make that update, deploy it through 3 different environments to get it out into production. And so again, custom code, you can get exactly what you want, but it's going to come at a cost. All right, kind of winding things down on the integration approaches. The last one that we're going to talk about is middleware. You may say, what is middleware? Middleware is software that sits in between other software applications and handles all of the automation. It handles all of the transformation logic and gets it in with without a lot of human intervention. With middleware, much like custom code, we can get exactly what we want so long as the APIs are there to support it. We also get extensibility into multiple systems. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Middleware is typically going to be faster than custom code, but not quite as fast as those packaged options. And we're going to get flexibility and error handling. And so the greatest integration in the world, by the way, you're going to have errors at some point. Something is not going to make it across for one reason or another. And with middleware options, you get some great retry mechanisms to address the errors. On the downside, these middleware options, you're still having to build something. It's not that packaged integration. And so where a publisher of a software application that has an integration may enhance that, we're not getting that kind of benefit. We would have to go build those enhancements on our own. And you are going to have some ongoing investment in that middleware tool. And so one of the things that we like to do, our ethos again, is that we want to evaluate the packaged options first. And if the packaged option isn't going to meet our needs, we look at middleware second, and custom code again is kind of that last resort. Let's talk about some integration examples, some different fun projects that we've worked on. Here's an example of an integration that actually is using several different kinds of integrations. We've got some packaged integrations. We've got middleware tying a whole bunch of different things together. And the other great thing about this integration, I referenced that middleware is extensible. And I'll talk through that here as we look at this diagram. Excuse me one second. So this is an organization that came to us several years ago, very rapidly growing nonprofit. In December of 2016, they basically broke the internet. They received more online donations than they had ever, and it literally cratered their QuickBooks system and their legacy donor management system. And so these guys are really crafty. You'll notice we've got PayPal, we've got Authorize.net, and we've got Stripe. They've found a way that if you're willing to give them money, they've got a way to collect it. And so they actually had some developers on staff that built some custom code type integrations into their Salesforce environment. They leveraged some pre-packaged integrations to do things like gift acknowledgement letters. Again, that's that pre-built one where the publisher has provided all the hooks and maintains that. And then we came in and took their e-commerce store. They sell goods that are made by refugees around the world through a Shopify site. We're taking those, routing them through this middleware, passing them into the donor management system, and then recording the financial transaction over in Intact. And then we've built several different integrations in Slack for notifications about big orders, about error handling, error notifications so they can go retry things. And so this is where that middleware, that extensibility really, really shines. Here's another one where, again, we've got a combination of some pre-built and some middleware-based integrations. This is an international faith-based missions organization that uses an online giving platform called Pure Charity. And Pure Charity had built an integration directly into Salesforce to record donations. And through that integration, we're seamlessly pushing those gifts and the donors into the CRM system in real time. And what was really neat about this Pure Charity system is that it also had an operations component. And so people would work with this organization to go on mission trips around the world. And as part of that, they had to provide all kinds of documentation, immunization records, agree to certain, to a code of conduct. And unfortunately, that was not available in their standard integration. And so what we did was we built a file-based integration. Again, sometimes that Excel is the only way to get it. What we did was we built a process by which they could save that Excel file in either Google Drive or Dropbox. And the middleware watched for that, picked that information up, and wrote it into the CRM. And that was their kind of central point to view all of their activity, whether it was donors or that operational activity where people are going on these trips. And then, of course, we would sync those financial transactions over into the accounting system. All right, so this all sounds great, Scott. We want to get going. We want our systems integrated, and what do we need to do next? Well, the first thing is we've got to begin with the end in mind. We will get calls from people on a regular basis, and they'll say, "Hey, Scott, we've got this system and we've got that system, and we want to integrate them." And we say, "Great. What do you want that integration to do?" And they say, "We want to integrate these systems." We say, well, that's great. I understand that, but what specifically does that integration need to do? And so in order to really be successful with your integration, you need to be able to clearly articulate it with as much specificity as possible what that needs to do. So here's some examples. When properly integrated, our systems will sync all of our customer data across systems so that we can see full order and payment history in each application. Or perhaps a much more nonprofit friendly example, when our systems are properly integrated, they will provide access to summarized journal entries for all donations on a daily basis. So we've really got to narrow down what parts of these systems do we need to get talking to one another. All right, here's the next one, process. And again, I wish that we were all in the same room together because I'd love to see, see hands going up and down. How well are your processes defined? Is your team in agreement as to what the process is? Where do things begin and end? We frequently, after we've kind of laid the groundwork of this is specifically what we're trying to accomplish with the integration, we'll start off our projects with a workshop, a requirements gathering workshop. And we'll go around the room and we'll ask, how do you do this? And the first person will raise their hand and they say, well, we do it like this. And then the person sitting next to them goes, no, I don't know what you're thinking. We do it like this. And there's that third person that goes, you're both wrong. No, we do it like this. So we got to make sure that everybody is on the same page. The computers only do what they're told, and if we got people thinking that they need to do different things, the system just isn't going to work. So you got to get everybody on the same page. And part of that is determining when and how your integration should run. Oftentimes, our integrations are built where there's some kind of trigger event. Hey, we received a new donation, and in real time, let's go push that donation over into the general ledger. Other times, there needs to be some kind of a human review. It's a button press, or maybe somebody in operations or accounting needs to review an entire batch before it gets pushed over. And then the other type that we see is we schedule things. Every night at midnight, go grab this data and move it from here to there. So make sure everybody's on the same team with your process. All right, this one. This is a big one. I have a feeling that there were a lot of sighs as the slide came up. What is the quality of your data? We've all heard the expression garbage in, garbage out, and oftentimes that phrase that's been around forever is used in the context of report. And that's absolutely true for reporting. If we put bad data in, we can't expect to get good reports out. And the same is as true, if not more true, with our integrations. If we have bad data in our source system, we're going to now have bad data in our target system. And that can be a big problem. So before you start taking on an integration project, check to make sure that you've deduplicated your data set. Validate the accuracy of the data, and then fill in the missing pieces. We've probably all got all kinds of different fields on our in our donor management systems. Make sure that those critical values are populated. Otherwise, you're going to now have a mess going downstream into other systems. The other part of this is making sure that you have consistent identifiers, record IDs across different systems. And in a minute, I'm going to show you an example of where that really comes into play. And with that, we will go ahead and hop into a quick live demo. So I'm going to exit the presentation. Let me switch tabs here, and I am going to log into this online fundraising tool called Raise Donors. We do not sell Raise Donors, but we do a lot of partnering with them on projects. And if you're looking for a new online giving platform, this is a fantastic one to check out. So we're going to come into this tool. We're going to build a new online give page. And let's just give it something to get started. And we'll go ahead and publish this page. I mentioned a minute ago that it's important to have common IDs across systems. One of the things that happened when I added this new online fundraising page is that we immediately and seamlessly created a new campaign over in our donor management system. In this case, it's salesforce.com. And so now, whenever we receive donations through that online giving page, the integration is going to tie it to this campaign. These are in sync, in other words. And even more importantly, we've gone all the way downstream into our accounting system, and we've created what's known in Intact as a project. And so if we come in here, we will see that project got created. So the action of creating that fundraising page created a campaign and then created a new project in our accounting system. And this again speaks to that extensibility of middleware, where one action in one system can go trigger off a whole bunch of other things. Let's go back to our donation system, and we'll pull up the fundraising page. We're in test mode. No money is actually moving around here. But we've got somebody that's going to make a generous $250 donation. and that'll get submitted. And again, our system, hands-free right now, is seeing that this donation was received in the donor management system. And now, to keep the data clean over in the CRM system, it is looking for an existing donor. It's checking various aspects of the donor information that we got in the donor management system, looking for existing donors that meet that criteria. And if it doesn't find it, if it doesn't find a match, it's going to go ahead and create a new donor. So here, we're still on our campaign, our fundraiser, and we can see that we've received a donation for $250 from the Ramirez household. And it has also synced over to the accounting system. So if we hop back over into Intact, go into our general ledger, we can see that donation from the Ramirez household. And what I love about this, it happened without a human having to do anything. All we did was created our online fundraising page. And the next thing you know, all of this data was propagated across our central and critical applications. So that concludes the the demo. Let's open the floor up for questions.
Awesome, thanks, Scott. We do have a few questions for you. Sorry, I had a tickle in my throat. First is, does this pertain to Abilla MIP or Community Brands MIP? Can you work with them, or is it just, are you just Intact focused?
That is an excellent question. We have in the past building integrations with MIP, and their architecture is a little bit different than some. And really, the export import is really the only option that we've found for working with MIP.
Gotcha.
That is a good question.
The next question, can you integrate Razor's Edge with Sage Intacct?
The answer is yes. There are some details that need to be worked out. Need to know a little bit more about which version of Razor's Edge you're on. I believe you need to be on the NXT version. But yes, Razor's Edge can be integrated with Sage Intacct.
Wonderful. And how long does an integration project take to complete?
You know, it varies, as you might expect, depending on the number of systems that we're tying together, the complexity that we are having to build into these integrations. But in general, most of our projects run about 90 days. It's not to say that they can't take a little bit less, and it's not to say that they don't take longer, but 90 days is a pretty good average.
Gotcha. Here's another question for you. Regarding Salesforce, is there the ability to batch transactions through an integration, as we do not want the individual transactions in Intact?
Yes, and yes, that is an excellent question. And I have a feeling that the way that we present this integration in the demo may throw you off a little bit. We don't want to wait until midnight. We don't want to keep you on the webinar all day. So for demo purposes, we built that integration as a real time so that you can see the data flowing across all three very, very quickly. 99% of the time when we build a GL integration into Intact, it is done in batch. And there's a whole bunch of different ways that we've built those. We've got a client who they tend to have to make a lot of adjustments. Somebody makes a donation and they get a call. They call up the organization and say, "Hey, I meant to give it to this, but I gave it to the general fund. Can we move?" And in Salesforce, it's very easy to just go in and edit the record. But if we've already synced it to accounting, it's not quite the same. We've got to get into reversals and so forth. And you're never going to you're always going to have some kind of adjustments to deal with, and we've got ways of doing that. But what this one organization did was they actually waited a whole week. And some might say we need it more frequently. We can do whatever interval, but they wanted to give it a week before they sync things over, just to make sure that they had accounted for any adjustments that might pop up shortly after somebody made a gift. That is an excellent question.
Yeah, we've got another question that just came in for you. Is there a best time in the fiscal year to implement? It says e.g. 2Q build, 3Q run parallel, 4Q final cut over.
There really is no magic answer. We certainly have a lot of clients that try to that want to tie the launch of their integration to the start of the fiscal year or the start of a quarter. I think that what it really comes down to is how bad is the pain that you're experiencing in the organization, and can you wait until then to resolve it, or is it just going to hurt too much in the interim? I don't have like a specific magical answer for you. I think it really just depends on what kind of struggles you're having in your organization.
So she follows up by saying pros and cons of 2 stages. 1, convert to intact, and in second year do integration with Salesforce versus doing in one project.
So we have had clients that have done both. We've had clients that implement Intact first. We've had clients that have implemented Intact first and then implemented Salesforce and then done integration. We've had it go the other way. And we've also had organizations that did them at the same time. If you do them at the same time, you need to make sure that you've really got the bandwidth and the ability to absorb that much change at one time. How can you afford to have your focus divided among multiple projects? And if that's the case, yeah, full speed ahead. But there's a lot of people that also choose to do the crawl, walk, and run phased approach. And in some ways that can even be advantageous. Sometimes you have to live with a system for a little while to figure out how exactly you want them to be integrated. And by doing things manually for a little bit, it gives you some perspective on how you want that integration to actually run. So there's definitely no magic answer. It can be done both ways, but a lot of it just has to do, a lot of it's going to come down to how much time can you afford to give to multiple projects at once.
Yeah, she followed up by saying they have Salesforce already, but it's not fully mature.
Gotcha. It is important that you've got things pretty well settled out. Again, going back to the conversation toward the beginning about process, you need to make sure that you got your processes buttoned up, and I may be over reading into it, but if things are not very mature, that tells me that processes may still be in development. And so I'd want that to settle out before starting the integration project.
Excellent. Another question came in. How can I register for the certification course, and how long will it take?
I'm guessing that's in reference to the Salesforce nonprofit certification exam. Salesforce has changed how they do their certifications. I believe that if you go out to trailhead.salesforce.com, you'll be able to find information on all kinds of certifications. And as far as how long it will take, I mean, the exam itself, the exams range in the time that you're allotted between probably 45 minutes and a couple of hours, but really it's kind of up to you. And Salesforce, with their certification exams, they do not make them easy. I used to say they are not Mickey Mouse exams. They really, really test your knowledge. And so you definitely have to go into those exams being very prepared.
Great, and here comes another question for you, Scott. How long does it take to convert from Razor's Edge to Salesforce?
It all depends. I would say, thinking about the conversions that we've done, they're probably 3 to 5 months. If we're just moving the donor data from Razor's Edge to Salesforce, it can probably be done in 90-ish days. We did a project recently for an adoptions organization. We worked on it with the folks at JMT Consulting, and they were thinking really, really big picture, and they saw the full value of what Salesforce could bring. It's not just this donor system, it's this platform that we can leverage for all kinds of things. And so in addition to getting them off of Razor's Edge for the donor management and moving that into Salesforce, we built a portal or a community where families who were looking to adopt could go set up this profile, start their online fundraising, see what the donors were providing for them and their families, and even had a mechanism by which, when a family needed to receive funds to pay for things, there was a way for them to request funds through this community, and it integrated with Intact. So it depends on how far you want to take it. I would say minimum 90 days.
Gotcha. And the next one, make sure I can ask this right. How to think about Venn versus JMT, which one win?
So it's not an either or. It's a both and, or it might be one now, one later. We are not competitive with JMT. JMT is not competitive to us. We can't do what we do without them. And our goal is to come along and together between Venn and JMT, create that successful and seamless end-to-end system. We're complementary, not competitive.
Perfect answer. I like it. All right, so far, those are all of our questions. So I'm going to leave it open for just a second to see if anybody else has any questions. And while we're waiting, I'll take this minute to say, if Scott's presentation got you thinking about your back office, the systems you leverage, and how things could work better together, we want to know that both Venn and JMT can help you streamline those processes. We'd love to have a conversation with all of you and learn more about your nonprofit and how we can help. And today we're doing something fun that, as an added bonus for the first 5 people that sign up to chat with us, we'll send you a Starbucks gift card. The way you can do that is go to jmtconsulting.com/book. But we will also have a team that will follow up with you and can also put you in touch with Scott for anything as well. So I don't see any other questions coming in. So Scott, I'm going to wrap it up. I'll let you say any final remarks, and then I'll take it from there.
Well, thank you so much for hosting me and allowing me to present. I hope this added value. As Melissa said, you'll get a copy of the slides, but if you're eager to talk, if you got some questions, head out to venntechnology.com and connect with us out there, and we'll get you squared away. Thanks so much, everybody.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us, and Scott, thank you as always for your time today, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.